Welcome back to Big Riff Energy, episode 82. Today is Tuesday, September 17th. And welcome to all the new subscribers. That last video really popped off. I got a lot of emails and messages. I appreciate everybody that wrote in, and I'm going to get to the emails later. If you're new to the channel, if you haven't yet subscribed, go ahead and do that. And as always, you can write me anything you want to at bigriffenergy@gmail.com. And if you want, send in a voice memo too. I had somebody do that. It was extremely long, so I didn't play the whole thing on the podcast, but I feel like that could be a more engaging way of interacting with you guys. So yeah, you can write me a text, email, or send me a voice memo with your questions, ideas, comments, that sort of thing. bigriffenergy@gmail.com. I want to thank the listener who sent me this Bruce Springsteen book about the making of Nebraska. I have never really cared much about Bruce Springsteen. I went digging for your email and I couldn't find it. I wanted to write you back and thank you directly, but I just couldn't find the original correspondence. So I'll just do it on here. I think I remember you saying you weren't super crazy about Springsteen either, but this book is amazing. I recommend it to everybody that's interested in the creative process, being a creative person, making albums, what that does to you internally, externally, all of that sort of stuff, never being satisfied, all wanderlust, everything that goes hand in hand with making music and art and that sort of thing. It's called Deliver Me from Nowhere, The Making of Bruce Springsteen's Nebraska, and it's by Warren Zanes, who's a really great, almost journalistic style writer. This book is like maybe in the top 10 best personal favorite books about music that I've ever read. So I don't really have a topic today. I just want to talk about that and sort of how it relates to the creative process and mental health and that sort of thing. Yeah, never cared too much about Bruce Springsteen. I don't dislike him. There's some songs that are okay, but I never really got the hype. And I was kind of curious as to whether I'd even be able to get through this book. I've been putting it off for a while too, man. I went on a little business trip and read it on the plane. Read the first 3 quarters on the way there and the last quarter on the way back. It was a really engaging read. So I would always listen to the Nebraska album driving through Nebraska on tour, trying to understand why people like it, why it's such a important recording for Bruce Springsteen and kind of for music in general. And I just never really understood it. I kind of could understand why other people would be fascinated by it, but it just never did anything for me. And reading this book really made me appreciate it. He was sort of, I don't know, the next Bob Dylan, he was the next guy in line at this point in his career. He had some pretty big records, big sounding records, big studio production, him and the whole E Street Band, and the trajectory of his career was just like a rocket ship at this point in time. And he was set up to be the guy. He kind of already was the guy. I think he was had the cool factor. Even, like the New York punks liked him, thought he was cool, but the mainstream loved him. The critics loved him. He had it all, the work ethic, the touring ethic, all of that. And he was going through some kind of personal crisis at this juncture. And the next obvious step in his career is Born in the USA, which is the record that followed Nebraska. But he had made these demos at home. There was a brand new technology. It was a 4-track cassette tape recorder for like $200 or something. So he sent his guy out to get one. He set it up in the bedroom of his home and sat on the edge of the bed with a guitar and a harmonica and made these demos. 4 tracks, you know, the most you can record at one time is 4 microphones. So very far removed from the big budget, big productions of his previous material. And this is a technology at this point, early 80s or whatever, mid 80s, that is now available to the general public. And to me, that's one of the biggest takeaways from this book is this marked a turning point where you could make records at home. And Bruce wasn't making a record in his mind. He was making demos, feeling out the songs that would be the next record. But he recorded them all on cassette, you know, like a cassette that you would buy at the store. Any person in the world could go buy one of these 4 tracks and buy a cassette and do the exact same thing. So he got done with these demos. He thought he was onto something. He was inspired by the film Badlands, which was about the Starkweather serial killer dude in Nebraska, and sort of how that related to being American and sort of the loneliness and self-isolation and perpetual psychic violence that permeates American culture and what that does to people. So he was really on to something like specific and deep and weird and upsetting in a way and cathartic and yeah, really far removed from like super big stadium pop culture, mainstream accepted rock songs about being American. This was like the shadow, you know, the Jungian shadow of the American identity. But he takes this cassette into the studio with his band, and they're, you know, everybody's learning the songs and stuff, and they're trying to record these songs in a big professional studio. And I believe the first one they did was Born in the USA. Huge production, sparkly, shimmery radio hit, obvious to everybody from the jump. Big, loud snare, big, epic, mainstream anthem. Okay, we're on to something. They try to record these other songs, and none of them work. Not a single one of them is working. They try everything, and they keep making the songs worse. Somehow they're losing their soul. They're losing whatever like spontaneous magic is in the original version. And Bruce is traveling all over the place with this cassette in his pocket, collecting lint, going in and out of cassette players, not protecting it as you would the next Bruce Springsteen album. And at some point, with the help of his closest confidants, including Steven Van Zandt, who plays Syl on The Sopranos, which there's actually a kind of a crazy tie-in the last couple of weeks with that, which I'll get to. But some of Bruce's closest, most trusted confidants tell him this is the album. And so Bruce Springsteen, who is set up to be like the biggest rock star in the world, I think he kind of was already, but yeah, he's set up for like a big layup, you know. He puts out a record that's not supposed to be a record, that was recorded on a 4-track cassette recorder that you can buy at Radio Shack. And it is the most unexpected, illogical, anti-business, you know, anti-music industry, caring about the trajectory of your career. And understanding that made me finally really appreciate Nebraska and like the impact that it would have still to this day. You know, you have bands making records at home and releasing what they're recording at home. And not all of that might be all that great, but just having the ability to do that is such a disruptive force in an industry that was usually, you know, kind of controlled by like a corporate dictatorship, for better or worse. I think there were some pros of the old model for sure. They had much tighter filter. You know, you had to be really, really good for anybody to hear your music. But there's some upsides to everyone having the ability to record and release music. And Nebraska by Bruce Springsteen is kind of like, I don't want to say the first ever instance of that, but it's like a monument to not needing, you know, I was talking about Black Flag last episode and just them doing everything on their own. They did deal with a label at first, but then obviously ended up starting their own label. But yeah, which is why I think the punks and the DIY, like first wave hardcore folks and those kind of people, indie rockers, like rebel type people, really love and appreciate Nebraska. I still don't really like, I listen to it and I think it's okay. I have a much deeper understanding and appreciation of what it means now, but I was listening to another one of his records as I was reading, because they sort of, you know, the book deals with his career leading into Nebraska and then the aftermath. But I was listening to one of his records, The River, which I thought was really good. I would definitely rather listen to that than Nebraska, but definite like major punk rock move to do that. It's like the last thing that made any sense to anybody. But you know what was fascinating is the old guard, like traditional music industry, those guys kind of understood, like the guys on top, the A&R guys and those sort of people, they sort of understood that they didn't know shit. They knew business, but they didn't know what was cool. And when they took Nebraska to the label, the guys were like, one of the guys, like the gist of his attitude was like, I don't fucking get it. And I don't need to get it, because I know that this is something that you need to do. And it's something special. He could at least recognize like, that's something special. And so they were totally on board. And I think that's another advantage of the old model of the record industry is you have guys that were really adept at selling stuff and marketing stuff. And I'm speaking very generally here, but from what I've read and from what I understand is, for the most part, they weren't really meddling in the artistic or creative aspect of it because they knew that they were business guys. They didn't know what made something cool to the kids or cool to artist types or whatever. They had like more of an instinct of recognizing something that they could sell. And I think nowadays everything's all muddied up with people thinking that they're musical geniuses when really their job is just to be selling a product. So yeah, many takeaways from this book. One of the, again, whoever sent me this, man, if you listen to this, email me again so I can find that email. I'd like to talk to you. I really appreciate this book a lot. These sort of things enter my life. Seems every time I am sent something like this or discover something like this, it's at the perfect time. And what's crazy is that Bruce Springsteen is 34 years old. He has finished Nebraska. He's moving from New Jersey to LA. He's going to like officially be an LA guy. He has a depression and a darkness and a like an oncoming nervous breakdown creeping into his psyche and his soul. He has like never been more lost. He's never been more depressed. His friends are like genuinely concerned about him being suicidal and stuff like that. And keep in mind, this is one of the biggest rock stars in the world. So he's traveling from New Jersey across the country with his friend to move to LA. And they're stopping at a bunch of different places along the way. I think it sounds to me like he gets more into this in his autobiography. They just kind of touch on it briefly in this book. But they somehow end up somewhere in the Midwest at a state fair. And he writes a song about this, but this part really struck me. He's sitting in his car with his buddy, watching all these people at the state fair doing normal Midwestern American civilian stuff. And he realizes that because of his success and because of his fame and where his artistic and creative drive, his necessity to create art and songs and get that express, the deepest parts of his soul and everything cathartically, because he has been so successful at that and it has resonated with so many people. He is now forever an outsider. He can't ever just go to the state fair and ride the Ferris wheel and eat funnel cake or whatever people do. And all he can do is watch from the outside. And the sense of isolation and loneliness and feeling alien and foreign and disconnected. Yeah, he was in a bad spot, and he got through it. Nebraska, I think, brought out a lot of stuff that he hadn't dealt with because he had been grinding so hard, making albums, touring, making albums, touring, making albums, touring, that he had no opportunity to address things from earlier in his life that maybe had a negative effect on him or whatever. And this is the story of everyone I've ever known in touring bands, everybody. And it's just so crazy to read about Bruce Springsteen, huge, giant, successful, famous rock star. I mean, that's the top of the top of, if you're a kid trying to like play guitar, write songs, whatever, that's the top of the mountain. And you get older and you realize no one is immune to the pitfalls. And you can look at Bruce Springsteen and be like, cry me a fucking river, you're a multimillionaire, you've led the perfect, most like fantastical, successful life in your field. But they say, mo money, mo problems. And it's for sure, man. It's for sure. It's a double-edged sword. And I think that the more time passes with rock and roll being a thing, metal being a thing, playing in bands being a thing, touring being a thing, like with each new generation, I think every new generation has a better understanding of like the dangers of it and finding a balance and that sort of thing. And Bruce got through it. He made Born in the USA right after that, which is kind of in a lot of ways the opposite of Nebraska. And then his career, exploded. But yeah, this book gave me a huge respect for him. Although I'm still not like crazy about his music, it just doesn't hit me like somebody like Tom Petty or something like that. But I really, really deeply respect and appreciate the boss now. And I really respect Nebraska for being a monument to DIY songwriting, recording. Yeah. And if you fast forward, now literally anybody can do it. You can make a record and release it yourself on the internet. If you have, a little capital, you can even release it yourself physically. CDs are super cheap. Tapes are super cheap. Vinyl's a little bit more, but you can do it. And I think Bruce Springsteen recording one of his most beloved albums, it's the album that he says is his best still to this day. That's a fork in the road, man. He sort of like helped excavate the ground for that DIY fork in the road. So I love this book, man. Deliver Me From Nowhere. I would recommend anybody that cares about music or making stuff, or sort of the most common theme of this podcast, which is like the human desire for creativity and self-expression and what that can do to people. Yeah, read this book. Incredible. I mentioned Steven Van Zandt, who's Bruce's guitar player, he was one of like several people who urged Bruce to go ahead and put out Nebraska before they made Born in the USA. And talk about selfless, man. Because Steven's not on it. He doesn't perform on it. They're not touring on it. They're not, yeah, nobody in the band benefits from Nebraska existing. And in fact, talking about not touring on it and not promoting it, I highlighted something and I'm very ill prepared. I'm probably not going to be able to find it without spending too much time on dead air. But I thought it was cool that the marketing was very understated. And yeah, Bruce didn't want to tour the songs, didn't want to play the songs, didn't want to do interviews. And he told his people, like, I'm paraphrasing because I can't find the highlighted section, but he says, I have, no desire to explain this. I have no desire to defend myself. I have no desire to, lay this out for people. No apologies, no explanation. This is the new Bruce Springsteen record. You figure it out and let the music speak for itself. And I think that's great. And, in my experience, the more you speak about your own music, the more you're misunderstood and the more you're like quoted out of context, and it muddies the water. So that made a real impact on me. I was kind of getting to that place on my own, but yeah, you listen to an album with your ears when you hit play and the songs start playing. You don't listen to an album by reading an interview. You don't get feelings of an album by listening to somebody talk about the album. He's right. And you do have to market stuff if you're not Bruce Springsteen, but I think that's another good lesson to take out of this book for all of us, especially in the modern era where people want to over-explain and have endless information and no wisdom, But yeah, Steven Van Zandt urges Bruce Springsteen to make Nebraska, despite it possibly negatively affecting his own life. Where do you find friends like that, man? Where do you find bandmates like that? Truly selfless, understanding, compassionate friend. And he knew that his buddy needed to do it for his own good, and for the long-term good of the band, I think. But I was watching Wise Guy. I'll throw the image up. I think it's called David Chase and the Sopranos. So Steven Van Zandt from the E Street Band plays Syl on The Sopranos. And yeah, this is like a 2-part HBO thing talking about the making of that show. Big takeaways that connect to the same themes. David Chase with the like crippling self-doubt as he's writing the Sopranos pilot. And every other thought is, who the fuck is going to watch this shit? And again, just like it's comforting to know that Bruce Springsteen was crippled with self-doubt and ambiguity about the future of his life and ambiguity about whether he loves or hates his own success, it's just as comforting to hear somebody who has been as successful an artist as David Chase talking about a piece of art as successful and monumental as The Sopranos, questioning whether it's even worth making or whether it's even worth watching, Another cool similarity that I noticed between David Chase and a lot of my favorite artists is LSD. I didn't know he was like an OG LSD user. And when you watch something like The Sopranos, it's not about the mafia. It's not even about a guy in therapy. It's not even about a guy trying to balance family life and work life. There's something else there. David Chase is pulling something out of the ethereal dimension, the spirit dimension, whatever you want to call it, the immaterial oneness that connects everything, And so many of my favorite artists were of that era, of first wave LSD, when it was actually just LSD and not whatever weird research chemicals they're selling kids now, you know. David Milch, who wrote Deadwood and NYPD Blue, great writer. He was the same way. He genius level intellect, you know, Ivy League school, but getting into a lot of trouble with the law because of psychedelic chemicals and that sort of thing. And there's other ways of accessing that dimension. I've called this sort of thing like depth art before. There's sugary bullshit, surface level, vapid, materialistic Disney puppet show bullshit. And then there's like depth art, which is coming from a mysterious, ethereal place of like deep and profound truth. And a lot of people that make that sort of thing are like psychedelic users. But there's other methods. I know David Lynch uses like transcendental meditation and that sort of thing. Jerry Seinfeld was even doing transcendental meditation every day when they were making that show. Yeah, David Chase is one of those guys. Another thing I found very fascinating is Steven Van Zandt used to go to the bar with James Gandolfini every day when they got done shooting. They showed a clip of Gandolfini talking about the shooting schedule, and it was just sheer brutality. But him and Stevie would go to the bar, and Steven Van Zandt said they had the same exact conversation every day, which was Gandolfini saying, I can't fucking do this shit. I'm not coming back tomorrow. And Stevie saying, you got to do it, man. You got a lot of people depending on you. And they did that every day. They would wrap shooting, go to the bar. Gandolfini would quit the show. And sometimes he wouldn't show up for a few days. And then he would come back. And man, again, it's like you're on the most popular. You are making the most popular thing in your field. Still, you know, beloved as one of the greatest actors ever in that field on one of the greatest shows ever on television, right? That's the medium, is television. And that show and that actor are two of the most beloved things that medium has ever produced. And still this guy is like, I can't do this. The self-doubt, you know, the pain, the emotional pain that he's going through, the lack of sleep. No one making something great is immune to it. And I got a lot of emails off the last episode about like people kind of concerned because I was like, oh, I didn't make one last week because I wasn't feeling it. But you shouldn't be concerned. You know, I have learned to just accept that. Just accept it. And I feel like Gandolfini's life would have been a little bit better if he knew in his core, and maybe he did. I don't know enough to speak on it, but if you know in your core, like, I'm not quitting. Today, I feel like fucking quitting. Today, I have visions of nuclear annihilation. I want everyone to die, including myself. I'm over it. You know, if you try to fight that, it just makes it worse, right? But I've learned to accept it. Some days, some weeks, I'm not going to feel like doing this, and that's fine. That's fine. Who gives a shit? You know, when I feel like doing it, I'll do it. And if I don't, I won't. Unfortunately, I'm in a position where I can do that. I'm not filming for 16 hours straight or 14 hours straight with a 12-hour turnaround 5 days a week, like poor Gandolfini was. Another thing they got into was the ending of Sopranos. You know, Nebraska, I think, is like a bold, I don't know if it's divisive, but super unexpected, super stark, bold statement of intent that is very, very different from what you would expect, right? I don't want to spoil the ending of The Sopranos. If you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. But David Chase, you know, of course, to him, it was a very deeply profound, philosophical, spiritual statement. That was the only correct way spiritually to, I don't want to say conclude that story, but yeah, I don't know how else to describe it. It was the only way that honored the spirit of that whole story that he was telling. Is the only way to do it. And yeah, sometimes when you do something really, really meaningful or profound to you, the average listener or the average viewer, in the case of The Sopranos, may not get it, and they may hate it, and they may be pissed. But that's okay. That's okay, because, I just watched a thing with Fede Alvarez and Ridley Scott, and Ridley Scott just told him, don't read reviews. You are the only critic whose opinion has any meaning to what you're doing. And I subscribe to that for sure. But yeah, the ending of The Sopranos is awesome. I even the first time I saw it, I was like ecstatic. It was just such a bold, meaningful, beautiful way of not concluding, but concluding, sort of. All right, so maybe there's something that means something in all of that. I'm going to tell you a little bit right now. Listen up, because I'm talking about pull the plug patches, the first and so far only official sponsor of Big Riff Energy. Did anybody see that they announced pre-orders for a big, giant, I think it's 3.5 feet by 4.5 feet, D.O. Holy Diver textile flag? I have to have that. I'm imagining there's some of you that have to have that. Wouldn't you like D.O. Holy Diver hanging 21 square feet? 18? What is it? Yeah, whatever. 21 something square feet in your office, workplace, studio, rehearsal room. They got other flags too, but the D.O. Holy Diver one is the coolest for sure. The long sleeves are great. I own several of them, about to own several more. The patches, obviously, their namesake. Pull the plug patches rules. I thank them for sponsoring the podcast. Pulltheplugpatches.com. Tell them Big Riff Energy sent you. Now, fan emails. I got one from my old buddy Eli here. Gonna do fan emails. The record of discussion this episode is Dreamless Veil. What the hell is it called? It's coming out on Friday. Every Limb, Limb, of the Flood. A great record. If you like dissection, you'll like it. Kind of a super group, coming out on Relapse Records on Friday. I'm going to dig into that, but first I need to dig through these questions. Eli, what's up, dude? I hit a very cool personal milestone not too long ago that had me reflecting on music that had turned a decade old recently. I revisited many releases such as Foundation of Burden, The Gatecreeper Demo, and Vacant Face. For those of you who don't know, that is an album by one of my former bands, Takeover and Destroy. It had me wondering if there were any songs for your time with Takeover and Destroy that you were still proud of. Spirit Adrift is the best of your work, in my opinion, but I still find a lot of joy in those records, and I think that they have a lot of really great songs on them. Yeah, so I moved to Phoenix 2011 to go to recording school, and then went to Santa Monica to do some work out there once I got done with that program. And when I came back to Arizona, I joined one of my favorite bands in Arizona at the time, Takeover and Destroy. The first thing that we did together is still my favorite, for sure. It's called Endless Night. I think it was like 5 tracks. And that one was a lot of fun, man. We were all really excited. We were all focused. I remember writing that with Alex, the other guitar player. I'll go out to his place, not too far from his house in Gilbert, Arizona. there was like a footbridge going over a canal, and we would go out there with acoustic guitars. I would imagine wild turkey, uh, some beers, some other stuff, and we would sit on that footbridge in the middle of the night with acoustic guitars, feeling good, smoking cigarettes, writing riffs, and we wrote most of that record together. Uh, oh, quick trivia little tidbit too. Speaking of Foundations of Burden, the guy that did the artwork for that and the first Paul Bearer record actually did artwork for Endless Night, the record I'm talking about. So yeah, that was a good time. We were playing a lot. We toured a lot off of that. We might have toured more off Vacant Face, I guess. We toured a little bit on Endless Night. We toured in like a orbit bus, like one of those, not like a bus, but like a shorter bus, bigger, like, big, wide and tall body. And we had our friends Max and Heather driving us, so we didn't really have to do much. And that was a pretty wild time. Yeah, I think that was 2012? So we must have made Vacant Face later. It all kind of blurs together, man, to be honest. But I really like Endless Night still. I still will listen to that maybe once a year or so and appreciate it. There's some super cool riffs. There's evil. There was like a very clear, evil, spooky, badass aesthetic. There was like an attitude during that time period. There was like an element of danger and chaos. Very good. But then I think we all went too far with that. I know I did. Because you're asking about Vacant Face. I can't even remember. Yeah, if you put a gun to my head and asked me to like sing a riff from that, I'm not sure I could. It would take me a long. I'm thinking right now, trying to remember any of the songs. I don't even remember making that record, to be honest. The thing I remember most is there was like a lot of full frontal male nudity involved in that recording session. We did it with we did both of those records with our friend Bob Hogue in Mesa, Arizona. Flying Blanket Recording, shout out. And we did the next one with him too. I was sober for the next one, and I remember that one. Well, I was gonna say I remember it, but I mean I was sober. I remember touring off that next one, or maybe right before we recorded that. Anyway, yeah, Vacant Face, I don't remember making that one at all, dude. At all. But I do really like Endless Night still. I think I remember Vacant Face being a lot less focused. I think there were a lot of different intentions from, there's some strong personalities in that band. I think we were all pulling in different directions, and yeah, we were all just too fucked up, I think. But yeah, Endless Night's cool. I like that one still. John C. Hey, Mr. Garrett, John C. here. Not John P., the official Surgeon General of Doom. John C., the former former/ex/current drummer of Solitude Aeternus. I just wanted to say thanks for the many kind things you've said about us over the years. Wish I could have seen you at Hell's Heroes just to say hi. Really dig your Big Riff Energy show and look forward to the new episodes coming out. Love your past work, and I look forward to what's coming. I know that previous sentence was way too brief, but there is a lot to unpack in those 11 words. You're killing it. Please proceed to kill it. Titties, John C. Yeah, this is why I do this shit, man. John C., thank you, man, for reaching out. Thank you. Yeah, there is a lot to pack in those 11 words, and I feel the same way about everything that y'all have done, man. You guys are, I've talked at length about Solitude Aeternus on here, but I'll just say, love your music, love your drumming. That first record is so groundbreaking, man, because it's like metal drumming. You know what I'm saying? Like metal drumming in the context of Doom, which was kind of like a new thing at the time. It's kind of cool. I feel some like thrash influence on the drumming. It's a little more, It's not busy in a sense that like is distracting, but it's you're saying something. You know what I mean? Like no disrespect to Vitus or Trouble or any of those bands, but the drums are like pretty damn straightforward, you know. You were saying something. It's cool. It's a cool like dichotomy. The doom vibe, but with kind of more expressive, progressive, borderline technical drumming. And thank you so much for writing in, man. It means a lot. And yeah, I wish I could have hung with y'all at Hell's Heroes. I've kind of been like, Spirit Adrift's kind of been on hiatus for the last year, and I sort of wanted to just go back to being a fan of music. So I don't really hit people up for special treatment at festivals or shows or anything like that. If it's like really good friends of mine playing the Mohawk or something, I'll hang out with them, obviously. But I kind of wanted to just go back to being just a regular fucking fan, That being said, Spirit Adrift is booking some stuff for next year as of today, actually pretty exciting. And yeah, I look forward to what y'all are doing too, man. Thank you so much for writing in. It means a lot, dude. It's crazy that, some of my musical heroes listen to me talk about fucking nothing. Bruce Springsteen and Syl from The Sopranos. Lee, hey, Nate, I hope you're doing well. I just wanted to say thank you for your top 13 albums video posted this week. Really like the Birds, specifically the album The Notorious Bird Brothers, but I had not listened to no other until this week. Incredible record and an instant buy. I especially like the track Strength of Strings. Yeah, that's the one, man. That's what I'm talking about with like some of these guys lose their mind just enough to get into that spirit dimension and pull stuff out. But then you got guys like Gene Clark who went too far and never came back, But that song he was in there, man. He was somewhere. Because you liked the Gene Clark album, I was curious if you had ever heard of Jim Sullivan, beyond his music having an effortless, mystical late 60s vibe with some nice folk touches and instrumentation. There is an interesting backstory to Jim himself and his disappearance that I believe you'd find interesting. Here's a link to check out his album UFO, released in 1969, and a brief bio via Wikipedia. Yeah, it was okay. I see some similarity with something like that Gene Clark record, but a lot of the songs felt a little bit like unfinished or unrealized to me. One of them I was really starting to feel, and then there was like, he threw like 8 bars at the end of it that went into like Mickey Mouse territory, and at the end of like a really profound kind of spooky song. So I wasn't that into it, but thank you for the recommendation. I think you recommended Pink Moon to me a while back too. I like that a lot more actually. But I do relate to the masculine urge to disappear forever in a foreign country, never to return. Yeah, a few more here, guys. Thanks for sticking around. Chase, hey, Nate, I hope this finds you well. How have you been? Been good. Busy as hell. I'm loving all your content as per usual. You're my favorite show on YouTube. It always just feels like I'm chatting music with one of my buddies. Your show is an absolute gold mine for finding new music. Thank you. Well, the discussion topic I thought of for you is something I'm genuinely curious about. Why don't touring acts book multiple night shows at smaller venues? You see this with other art forms more, like comedy seems like a win-win-win to me. Might hit similar numbers of people overall as if you did one big show and you don't have to travel as much. Then there's the draw that people get to see you at a smaller venue. What prompted this thought is Jack White did a pop-up show in my hometown, Ann Arbor. It's like a 500 cat venue or so, but the tickets sold out in like 2 minutes, so I didn't get to go. But it seems to me that he or even smaller artists could sell that place out 4 nights in a row, no problem. I'm interested in your thoughts. P.S. Thanks again for taking the time to give me those guitar lessons. It gave me confidence to just go for it. I've since wrote an original song for my band, and it has a solo in it. Yeah, we worked on the Snowblind solo, or you already knew the Snowblind solo. Pentatonic all day. We performed it live once as well. I was totally nervous, which is unlike me, but it went well. So thanks again. And Chase, I'll check out that song that you sent me. I'm glad you're doing it, man. That rules. Yeah, keep soloing. Yeah, I mean, you played the Snowblind solo. You really don't need to do much more than that, to be honest. Yeah, bands do that sometimes. The first Spirit Adrift shows after COVID were actually in New York City with High on Fire and Dysrhythmia. And we played a place in Manhattan called LPR, some French shit. I'm not going to try to say it, but yeah, it was 2 nights in a row. I think they both sold out. So it does happen. I just think there's like an oversaturation. So I don't know, actually, is the real answer. I don't really know. But for whatever reason, with touring rock and metal bands, it just seems like you're just get in and get out so the next one can come the next day, you know? The way that tours are booked in my world is like your booking agent puts in holds at different places. And especially since COVID, because so many people that depend on touring for their paying their bills were sitting around for 2 years with their thumbs up their asses. It's like the amount of holds on venues every single day of the calendar year for probably the next 2 years. It's just like insane. So if a band were to play at a venue 3 nights in a row, that's 2 nights that another band that's trying to get a hold in that basic time frame is not going to be able to come through. So right now, that's probably why that doesn't happen. Historically speaking, I'm not sure why it's not set up more like stand-up comedy, because a stand-up comic, like my wife and I used to go see Joey Diaz every time he came to Phoenix, and he would do like Thursday through Sunday or Thursday through Saturday. I don't think he does Sundays. 2 or 3 sets a night, bing, bang, boom, and then goes back home. You know, I wish our world was like that. It'd be a lot easier. But yeah, I think it's just because there's so many bands trying to tour, and especially post-COVID with so many independent venues shutting down and Live Nation owning basically everything now. They're trying to keep all the agents and bands happy, you know. If Joe Blow and the Jackoffs set up shop in Austin for 4 nights in a row, then Benny Hill and the Blowjobs won't be able to get a show there, and it'll fuck everything up. Something like that. Dave, hi Nate, I've been meaning to write for some time. What put it over the top is hearing you say on the latest episode that you didn't do the one previous because you weren't feeling it. I'll try to make this as clear as I possibly can. I'm going to speak for a ton of people who didn't ask me to. All we want is you doing your thing the way you always do it. We don't give a fuck what you talk about. We just love listening to you. Well, that's good, because I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about half the time. I'm talking about Bruce Springsteen books and James Gandolfini quitting The Sopranos every day. Truth be told, I've never been a huge metal guy. I mean, Slayer and Metallica, of course, and Sabbath too. Those are my first 3 as well, man. The stuff that really lit me up when I was younger, mid 90s to early 2000s, was certain strains of punk rock and punk rock adjacent rock and roll. Stuff like New Bomb Turks, Zeke, I don't know how to say that, Gaunt, Gas Huffer, Mudhoney, The Queers, Nashville Pussy, The Marked Men, and the list goes on and on and on. Is YouTube going to let me say The Queers? If you say it in like a positive way, I mean, I think that's kind of like an accepted term now, which is weird, because when The Queers came out, it was kind of like a hateful slur, you know? But queer, like LGBTQ, stands for queer, which I guess is, but it's like with my accent too, it almost seems like, yeah, I'm going to get demonetized. The Queers, you know? But lately I've been listening to so much metal, and that's because of you. I check out all of your recommendations. I've liked only a handful of them, and that's fine. It's been a blast to go exploring in these totally new to me realms. Point to all of this is that it's you that I tune in for. You're a kindred soul. When I watch your show, it feels like we're just shooting the shit about stuff that gets you excited. And that is such a gift. It's also the case that your values and mine totally line up. Dude, that's weird because I don't know how you could tell what my values are on here. It's funny, I have a lot of people accusing me of being crazy right winger fucking redneck weirdo. But then I said that a lot of followers of certain politicians are like cult member type people. And so that caused a lot of people to call me a dirty lefty hippie person. So I don't know how you could even align with my values because apparently I'm a dirty left wing hippie right winger ignorant redneck, I guess, whatever that is. Where are we at here? I can tell from the emails you read that there are a bunch of us who just really dig hanging out with you for an hour every week. You truly are doing a service. You have soul. That's a special thing in this world of crap. I'll shut up with the fanboy, and now I'm too old to be acting like this. Just please know that you're having a hugely positive effect on my silly little existence in Albuquerque, my home of 32 years. Breaking Bad territory, dude. I pray that you keep on keeping on with this project. Wish you nothing but good things in all your endeavors, brother. Dave. Thank you, Dave. P.S. I'll buy a Big Riff Energy t-shirt in a second. Don't care what you charge. I'll pay it. P.S. I dig what you said about Cash and Waylon Jennings, that we shouldn't throw a parade for ourselves for not doing what we shouldn't have been doing to begin with. I'm 14 years off the drink and drugs, and it feels kind of lame to be proud of that, but I still am. Statistically speaking, that's one of the hardest things that a person can do is recover from addiction. So I get what you're saying, but yeah, it's okay to be proud of that for sure. You earned it. And thank you, man. It means a lot. God damn. Okay. Couple more here. Shout out to Brandon for the support, by the way. I'm not going to read your email, but you know what I'm talking about. Thank you. Okay. Paul. Hey, your YouTube channel's killer. I came across your work late 2016 after some personal hellish nonsense, and Changed to Oblivion really spoke to me. Yeah, that came out of a place of personal hellish nonsense for sure. Anyhow, for years I've been enjoying your articles I randomly come across. Over the years since then, I own Wake, Voices of Omens, Choir Boy, Warning, 40 Watt Sun. Never would have come across them otherwise. Right on, man. Old now, and I have a smart 14-year-old that is music obsessed and loves your channel to the point where he comes to me when you release an episode. Anyway, the stuff you're doing is great, and I hope it keeps being interesting to you to do it. My favorite record of so far this year is, get ready for this band name, Crippling Alcoholism, with Love from a Padded Room. I don't know who the hell they are, but they seem like weirdos. Right on, Paul. Thank you. Yeah, I looked up their Bandcamp, so I haven't listened to it yet, but they described it as like a even more bizarro Nick Cave, so I'll probably like it. Thank you. Yeah, I want to thank everybody for the kind words. I'm a cockroach, dude. I'm never going to stop. Never going to stop. There's nothing that can slow me down. Even weeks where I don't feel like doing this. It's not a big deal. I'm just not going to fucking do it. But believe me, I'm doing other stuff. I'm not just not doing anything. I got plenty to do. But yeah, I appreciate everybody's concern, but you don't worry about cockroaches. They're the only thing that can survive the nuclear apocalypse, which is imminent. And yeah, I used to sort of more identify with wolves, you know, just never stopped moving, never stopped going, predatory, like, yeah, predator, always on the move. You get older though, I'm aligning a little bit more with the cockroach, just indestructible, a complete nuisance that will never leave. Okay, Wayne, last one. God. Okay, before I read Wayne's thing, let me talk about Dreamless Veil here. I'm going to bring up their Bandcamp. Dreamless Veil. There's the album art. It's a signal for me. The album is called Every Limb of the Flood. Let me read you their little Bandcamp bio. Members of Enter Arma, Artificial Brain, and Psychroptic, manifesting terrifying blackened extreme metal and offering one of the year's most haunting releases. This is a really good record. I'm not huge on black metal. This will probably be my favorite black metal album of the year. I'm like very, very, very picky with this style of music. I haven't heard Aransi Pazuzu's new album yet. but I'm sure that will be up there, although I'm not sure that even qualifies as black metal. It's kind of more like psychedelic chaos. But yeah, Inner Arma stayed over here on their tour with Paul Bear. Mike, the singer, was telling me about this. It's Mikey from Inner Arma on vocals, and the drummer from Psychroptic, and the dude from Artificial Brain playing multiple instruments. It is dark, scary, evil, technical, but not too technical, which is a phrase I've used to describe a lot of good music this year. Yeah, if you like dissection, reminds me of the French stuff, maybe like Death Spell Omega a little bit. Dissonant, but not annoying type of dissonance. It's more haunting. It's more tragic. Yeah, there's a lot of melody and a lot of dissonance, and they kind of go back and forth between those two ends of the spectrum. The more melodic parts give me the best vibes of Dissection, Storm of the Lights, Bane. And the more dissonant parts, yeah, remind me of the French stuff, particularly like Death Spell Omega. So if you like that stuff, if you're a fan of Artificial Brain or Enter Arma or Psychroptic, you will probably like it. It's out this Friday, which is September 20th on Relapse Records. Shout out to the Big Riff Energy ally, Relapse Records. And yeah, check out Dreamless Veil. I really like it. I haven't listened to a lot of black metal this year because I don't really like that type of music, but I like this, and it will be my number one black metal album of the year, I would imagine. I don't even know if you can count the Dark Throne album. I don't know. What do you call that? All right, last question. Endings are important here. Wayne, okay, fess up, you're Neon Nightmare, aren't you? If you're not, what do you think about the new single from them? Hope you're well. I have some more things to write to you about, but I just had to ask the question. Yeah, I don't know about that. I forgot to circle back last week on Neon Nightmare. I was doing sort of like a top 10, top 13 list. So here's my thoughts on the whole thing.